Hi, guys. Welcome again to another edition of The Big Shift. Today, we've got a wonderful life journey for you. And today, we're going into the global world of international cocaine smuggling. I've got a guy who was in some of the most dangerous South American jails in the world. Peter Tritton, how you doing?
Thanks for having me on the show, The Big Shift. Good to meet you.
Yeah, you've got an unbelievable story. I mean, you spent over a decade in Ecuador, in some of the world's
Yeah,
most dangerous prisons. We're going to get to that. But look, you also had one of your best friends, or one of the people you worked with in them days, was shot dead recently, wasn't he? Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? And
yeah,
we'll start with that, and then we're going to go back in your life.
yeah. Basically, one of the main gang leaders who I was in prison with in Ecuador, by the name, but nickname Hot Ellie, which is JL in Spanish, was recently shot dead on 28th of December last year, in front of his family in a restaurant in the port city of Manta, which is in Ecuador, and he had risen to power as like I say one of the main gang leaders in Ecuador, controlling a gang called the Choneros, which from an area of Ecuador called Choni, and the gang is at least 15,000, maybe 20,000 people strong now. They control a lot of the drug trafficking, a lot of extortion, murder for hire, all that sort of stuff. And
And he
he
was
was
the
actually,
he was the top guy here, Peter. Right?
yeah,
Life
yeah,
is cheap over there, right? This is a different world, Peter. Right?
yeah, very
He was the main guy, and he
head
worked his
honcho.
way up.
Well, I mean, I think from a very young age he was very high up in the gang because I first met him when he came into prison in the same prison that I was in Guayaquil, and he was only 26 at that time, sorry. And speaking to his associates and his brother, who was also in the prison, a whole bunch of them got arrested for murder charges. Talking to his brother one night, I established that he had killed himself by his own hand more than 85 people by the age of 26.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's quite a number. I
but
mean, life
obviously,
is,
you're
it's a
quite a
different
short
world
time on
over
the
there,
board.
Peter. Right?
Yeah, very different.
I mean, let's just put it in for the people that I mean, life is so cheap over there. I mean, it's fair to
Very
say
cheap.
there's a lot of poverty. For someone, for the viewers out there, give them a little bit of description of what it's actually like out there so they can kind of align with what the
I'll,
lifestyle's like where someone would have
yeah,
murdered so many people at such a young age.
I'll give you an illustration of how cheap life is out there. When I was in prison in Quito, I was using one of the payphones. Well, I was actually waiting to use one of the payphones there that they had, and that was quite unusual that they had payphones in the prison. Anyway, I'm waiting to use the payphone, and an African guy came off the phone, and then it was an Ecuadorian stood behind him, and the Ecuadorian started hassling him, saying, "Oh, let me use some of your calling time, your credit on your card." And the guy had run out of time, and he said, "Look, I haven't got any calling time. I've run out of time." The Ecuadorian pulled out a knife and killed him like that, just for that, for nothing. That's how cheap life is over there.
And I mean, tell us, we're going to go into your life and your journey and how you got there, right? We're just going to go with it, and we're going to get straight down to the content to help people to understand the rawness of this interview because you have an unbelievable story
Yeah.
here, right? So, on the back of that, tell us what your experience of what these prisons are actually like. Is it mob rule in there? Is there any security at all?
Not really. I mean, basically, the internal security is run by the gangs. So, like the inner core of the prison is gang controlled because they pay off all the guards, they pay off the director of the prison normally. So, I mean, the corruption over there is endemic from the bottom to right to the top, all the way to the president. There's corruption going on. There's rife. It's just in their way of thinking. That's the way they work. That's how it is. So, as far as security in the prison goes, I mean, that was one thing I learned very quickly that there wasn't really any. for yourself as a prisoner. So, you know, if you had a problem, you couldn't go to the guards and say, look, this guy's causing me grief, or go to the director of the prison, because all they would do is turn around to the gang and say, look, this guy's causing trouble. He's making accusations, you know, silencing basically, and then you'd have the gang on your back. So you had to stand on your own 2 feet, you know, and either work with the gang or just keep your head down, very much down.
Yeah, no, I get it. Look, a friend of mine, Raphael Rowe, you know, he's on Netflix. He's done the world's most dangerous prisons. You know, I mean, it's a wonderful series, but you know, I've done a lot of research, obviously, on you, right? You know, I know some people who've been in these jails as well, personally. You know, you've got the Peruvian place. They're like many kind of villages or kind of cities, right, where everyone just lives, right? You know, even your wife comes in. Do you want to tell us a bit more about the dynamic of that for you, how it was for you then?
I mean, I started up in Quito, in the prison that's now actually closed, and that was that prison was almost like in layout. It was like one of the Victorian prisons in England, you know, with the centre and the wings coming off it. And in that prison, there were shops, there were restaurants run by the inmates. There was a hardware store, grocery stores, baker. I mean, everything. Like you say, it was like a small town contained within the walls of the prison. You could get anything you wanted in there because it was so corrupt. I'd have shopping brought in once a week with the visits. The visits there, instead of coming into a visit room like they do in Britain, they would come onto the wing, into your cell, you know, so you could kick out whoever's in the cell, get your girlfriend in there, your wife or whatever, you know, have a nice day, and say goodbye at the end of the day. And the visits would be all day Wednesday, all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and every 2 weeks, they would have a thing called quedada, which was basically a night where your girlfriend, wife, or any female could stay overnight with you in the cell. So that was pretty good. So every 2 weeks we'd have a big party, get loads of drink in there and all the rest of it. So it was very much not like an English prison, as you well know. But on the other hand, there was all the danger as well. You know, it could turn on a what's the expression? Turn on a, well, in a
sixpence.
That's the one.
Yeah. So look, you know, I mean, years and years ago in the dispersal prisons that I was in as a Cat A,
I was a Cat A as well myself.
You know, it was different. You know, it was different in them days because the inmates ran the jail. I mean, you know, you weren't allowed your wives and stuff like that, but Screws was terrified to come on there. You know, it was with permission. I mean, it's changed now, so I get an idea. Of course, it's nothing like over there. But I've got a question to ask you. With all this stuff that's going on, Pete, so for you, you know, I know you was high profile, you know, you had a lot of money then and all this stuff. So you had resources, and you would come in as someone who was at a high level. What was it actually? Where was you in the hierarchy of that, and how difficult was it to integrate yourself into such a place?
The hierarchy of which the prison.
Well, you know, the gangs are running it, right? You know, you're a foreigner. No doubt you know people, you're working with people, but you know, this is a foreign country. This is South America. We know what it's like, these places, Caracas and all that. This is another world, right? And a very, very dangerous place. So really, even if you know people, it's going to be extremely hard for you, right? To integrate safely into that dynamic. How is that for you?
I mean, the prison in Quito wasn't as bad as the second prison that I ended up in. I did 2 years in Quito, and the gang structure wasn't as strong there. So us as foreigners, we actually had a wing of our own. It wasn't completely foreign. What I'm trying to say is not all the inmates were foreign. There was a mix of a few Ecuadorians and some Colombians and other South Americans, but mainly it was the foreigners that ran that wing. So I quickly realised this and banded together a few of us as foreigners to have a bit of strength ourselves. And gave our little gang a title. I called it Euro Banda as a joke, because the Spanish word for gang is banda, or band. So you know, we had about 20 or 30 of us who would sort of watch each other's backs, and we sort of teamed up with a bunch of Colombians as well on another wing. So we had that as a bit of leeway and a bit of strength. It took a while to, you know, to get that organised, but it helped. Now, when I got transferred from there to the second prison for trying to escape, that was very different because that was completely run by the gang, and well, two gangs in there who were at war with each other. And there, they didn't allow the foreigners to group together. They were much more, they were much more switched on about how to run things and much more organised. So they would split the foreigners up equally between the different wings, and also they would do that so that they could extort you, try and squeeze money out of you with threats of death, you know, torture, all the rest of it. That was one of their money making streams, revenue streams, should we call them. They would get a list of any foreigners coming into the prison from the guards, and when they arrived, they would sort of assess how much you were worth by what was, you know, what news coverage it was of your case, or how high profile a prisoner you were, or whatever. And they would try and hit you up for as much as they could, basically.
How is that for you then? You know, you had a high profile case, Peter, right?
Well, I was lucky because, like I said, I started in Quito and ended up in this second prison after about 2 years. So I'd become sort of established within the prison a little bit. And luckily for me, one of the main gang leaders from Guayaquil, which was the second place I was in, had been in prison in Quito for a bit, and I met him there.
So he knew you. And you had this is always good.
Back to Guayaquil. So when I arrived there, I'd managed to get some friends to phone ahead and like say, "Look, I'm on the way." So
and this guy's all right. You know, this guy's all right. We know who this guy is. He's a good guy.
I still ended up having to buy a cell and spend about $2,000 just to grease the wheels a little bit. But that kind of benefited me anyway, because that then meant I had my own space and I could do what I wanted. So I was lucky, really, because I had a Russian friend, ended up in there, and they extorted him, I think it was close to $20,000. I had an English friend who got caught there for, I think it was about 400 kilos, conspiracy to bring it in through Bristol docks, Avonmouth docks in Bristol. And I think he ended up losing about 100 grand through extortion to them. So
it'd be very easy, you know. It'd be very easy to them guys there, right? You know,
they're all tooled up with guns. You know, they're all tooled up with guns, machetes. They're all the weaponry you can possibly lay your hands on. But you know, the guards have brought into them, have been paid to bring into them. So, you know, what are you going to say to a group of 50? I mean, they would roll around 50 strong, all tooled up with handguns. You know,
it's madness. I mean, we have some footage, right? You know, we have some actual footage, right, of inside the prison, and there's guys in there. You know, they've got shorts, they've got handguns, and they're basically shooting it out like a cowboy and western film, anytime, any place, anywhere. I mean, in prison, that's quite something to behold, right?
Yeah, I mean,
and you get a taste of what that's like. Where very dangerous place.
I mean, I went through a couple of the shootouts. In fact, the guy that just got killed on the 28th of December last year, I was in a shootout with him. It was in October. I can't remember the year now, but about 9:30 at night. Basically, when his gang had first come into the prison, there was about, I don't know, 20, 25 of them got put on my wing, and the gang. The other gang who were already in the prison and established in my part of the prison didn't like him coming into the prison with his little crew, and felt threatened and felt like he was going to take over the place, which he subsequently did. So they decided to try and kill him. And I remember me and a German friend, also called Peter, were cooking this particular evening. And in this prison, you could have the doors open 24 hours a day there. They would lock us on the wing at about 5:30 at night, but the cell doors would stay open all night, so you could just lock yourself in when you got bored or whatever. So me and this guy are cooking away, doing some spaghetti bolognese, And one of the gang, this gang came up to me and said, "Oh look, could you do us a plate of food?" I said, "Yeah, no problem," you know. And I'd noticed that it was all feeling a bit funny on the wing that night, and there was like groups of 2 or 3 people, you know, around the wing, sort of having hushed conversations, and it was all feeling a bit tense. But I didn't know what was going on, and I said to my gym mate, I said, "You know, something's fucking wrong. It doesn't feel right." And he said, "Oh, you know, don't worry about it." So I've taken this plate of food down to this guy, and as I've given him the plate of food, the other gang, this is cutting the story a bit short. The other gang, one of their main guys, has come up behind me and over my right shoulder as I've given him the plate of food and turning. He's used me as cover to then shoot this guy, shot him straight in the face, blew the back of his head out. So I've obviously run, but you know, as quick as I could to myself, dived in through my door, slammed the door, and a 2-hour gunfight has then broken out between these 2 factions, including the guy who just got killed on the 28th of December. He came out of his cell, 2 guns in hand, well, 1 in each hand, and I think 3 people ended up, 2 or 3 people ended up getting shot dead. You know, like I said, it went on for 2 hours. There was about 12 people injured. Then the police came in after that 2 hours when the ammunition ran out, basically, and it all calmed down. They then came in and tortured all of us for another 2 hours until they found out what had happened, and it was horrific. I mean, they basically, I mean, one of the people who'd been executed, we'd heard him pleading for his life for about half an hour, and he'd been shot twice in the stomach, and you know, and then after half an hour they just shot him in the head, basically. And when the police got us out of our cells and had finished torturing us, they rounded us all up and pushed us into the space where this guy had been executed, basically. And half of the, you know, like an average cell, say that half the width of that was entirely full of this guy's blood. So they herded about 120 of us into this space, the space of, you know, like an English prison cell, you know how small that is. Packed 120 of us into this guy's blood. And I'll never forget that because of the smell, you know, the smell of a lot of blood.
They've done this on purpose, really. This would be one of the tactics, right?
Us a lesson.
It's all a strategy. Look, that's an interesting. That's
horrific.
Thanks for that. That paints a real picture of just what a dangerous place this is. And when it kicks off, it's like the Wild West because everyone's got firearms in there, right?
Yeah.
So when you say you know, I suppose because I've been in these places, I know how they do their strategies. They would basically, when that kicks off, leave you to it.
Yeah.
Kill each other, have it out, all the rest of it, and then when they've got their shit together, then they're coming heavy, right? They get.
I mean, I saw guards standing around watching people having machete fights until one or the other ended up dead, and then they just cart you away in punishment or whatever, or you just pay them off.
So so I get it, Peter. I do. So on that day after all this, you know, people dead and everything, and they come in now. You said they tortured you. So how did that go? What was their tactics? What did they do that day? And how would they? How would they do this stuff?
When the police came in.
Yeah.
Because this is not the guards. Because the guards were so corrupt in there, they didn't really do anything.
They don't get involved.
This is the police coming in,
right?
Police machine guns. You know, helmets, what total fucking terrible. So they get us all out, all face down on the floor, and then they just ran up and down or walked up. They would actually walk across the back of you, or they would walk up and down with a piece of 2x4 and just belt you in the side of the head or beat you, or with an iron bar, you know. So they were just walking around beating whoever they thought was involved until they got the truth. You know, got the ringleaders out, and they would look for injuries as well, where people had been shot or were injured or any sort of. So obviously they were then involved, so they would pull them out. People in cells, they were discharging firearms up against the sides of their heads, putting them in buckets of water, head first into buckets of water, drowning them. You know,
waterboarding, pretty much.
Waterboarding, yeah. And, you know, until they told them what was going on. I mean, I saw some of the gang leaders, pleading for their lives, crying. I remember on other occasions, the police are coming in and actually executing people. You know, martial law, just taking the gang leaders out and going, right, we've had enough of your fucking bullshit. Taking them out into the exercise yard at night and just popping them in the head. And in fact, I remember one guy got killed right in front of his wife and kid.
Yeah.
Pulled him out. We've had enough and just executed him.
That's a brutal environment. You know, I can't think of any more of a brutal environment, because you are fucked in every sense of the word. So you die, you know, I mean, you are, but you know, you got the firearms in there, everything's corrupt. You know, in my experience, when you're in these kind of environments, it's only a matter of time before bad stuff happens, right?
Exactly. I mean, that's what I was thinking all the way through. I was thinking at any minute now is going to be my turn. You know, they're going to decide, oh, it's the English guy's turn today. And I mean, the English guy that I mentioned earlier, who got extorted for about 100 grand, he actually ended up dead. He served 9 years, and he was due to get out. His parole papers had gone in. We knew he was getting out, and he stupidly did some business with one of the main gangs in there. And I kept saying to him, in fact, you have the same name as you. Well, I kept saying to him, please don't do it. I mean, because, you know, if it goes wrong, you know what's going to happen. Even if it goes right and it goes wrong, you're going to end up paying. Whatever happens, if the coke if it makes it back or it doesn't make it back, whatever, you are going to end up paying for it. Sure enough, something went wrong. Yeah. He ends up with about 150 grand's worth of debt, and they said to him, basically, if you don't pay by this day, we're going to come and kill you. Sure enough, that Monday came. They did the count, about 8:30 in the morning. By 9:30, we found him hanging in his cell.
Yeah.
And his parole papers came through about a week and a half after that, and he would have got out.
That's an unbelievable story, really.
I had to tell his two daughters the truth, because they tried to cover that one up, because they said it was a suicide. It wasn't. The gang had come in, they'd given him a bear hug, knocked him out, strung him up. We found him when he was hung. His head was touching the ceiling. The knot was all wrong. There was no chair. There was no way of him having got up there. You know yourself. You've seen it in prison. You know when someone's killed themselves when they haven't. It was all wrong. Yeah.
That's
and 2 years later, they did exactly the same to a Scottish guy. And at that point, the embassy stepped in and said, you know, what the fuck's going on? And at that point, things started moving. And it was around then that I ended up getting repatriated back to England and going into Wandsworth to finish off.
So, unbelievable stories, really. And look, you know, we know how this can work. And, you know, I've even seen it in these prisons. But there's so much room for this stuff to happen over there. Well, I can see that. So, look, how long was you in them South American prisons? And then, you know, you done the 2 years in the first place, you know, and then
I did a total.
How long did you do all in all? A decade, was it?
I did a total of 9 years and about 3 months over there, and then finished off in England in Wandsworth. I did 10 years, 10 days out of a 12.
That's a long time out of a 12. You know, it would be better off here, right? But look,
well, no, that you might say that, but the case that I had here, that the British police wanted to give me, they wanted to start it at 20, and I was going to go not guilty, so I was looking at 25 minimum. Yeah. They actually contacted the Ecuadorian authorities and said, look, we want the maximum for him over there, which was 25. And obviously I started bribing judges and whoever I could, left, right and centre. Got 12, had to plead with the judge not to give me less than 10. Can you imagine how sickening that is? Saying to a judge, please, Your Honour, don't give me any less than 10, because if you do, I'll get extradited back to Britain. I'll get 25 years. Madness.
Yeah, no, you know, I get it, you know, and this is the world of international coke trafficking, really, and it is money driven, you know, and it's it's your contacts, and look, when it does go wrong for you, then it's
goes wrong properly.
you know, you're really in it, you know, and let's so. Before we move on from that, so look, you know, I mean, we've got the gist of how bad that was, and I know you'd have many more stories. Is there anything more? Oh yeah, I can imagine, Peter. You know, was there any more really bad stories in there that was unbelievably frightening for you, or you thought, oh my God, I've never seen anything like this before?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, there's loads, but I mean, I'll give you another really good example.
Yeah.
And this one happened in Quito. There was an informant on the Colombian wing. I won't say his name. Well, it doesn't matter if he's dead anyway. Basically, that what they would do is in the prisons over there, they had what they called come muerto, which means in English, eat the dead. Normally, it's a life sentence prisoner who's doing life sentence out there is 25 years without parole. So they would bring in one of these come muertos who was doing 25 years to kill other prisoners. They would pay the guards and just bring this guy in as a contract killer, basically. So they brought in one of these to take out this informant who was causing a lot of trouble in the prison. And on a visit day, I think it was either Saturday or Sunday, I remember it was the weekend, a Russian friend of mine came over and said, "You won't believe what's going on our wing. Come and have a look. They're killing this informant." And so I went over, got there, and there was a crowd of people there, kids running around, women, men standing around. I pushed through, and there was this informant in the middle of a pool of blood, being stabbed repeatedly by this other guy, this come muerto. He stopped after about 10 minutes. He's left this guy gurgling and burbling on the floor, you know how it is, blood pouring out of him. Gone to his cell, sat there, smoked some crack with the knife out on the table, come back out, carried on stabbing this guy for about another 10-15 minutes until he's finally dead. So it's taken about half an hour for this guy to die. Guards standing around watching as well. So when he's, you know, when the guy's finally dead, then there's kids running through the blood, women and men standing there watching. He's gone back to his room, smoked some more crack. Guards have come, got him, taken the knife off him, given him a smack with a bit of wood, and taken him off the wing back to the wing that he was on, and that was it. There was this guy, pool of blood, visit day, and it just went back to normal people eating their Sunday lunch or whatever. And it was just, again, another example of how cheap life was there and how commonplace murder was. I mean, the murder rate there, in not so much in the first prison, but in the second prison, was between 4 and 6 people a week.
Yeah, look, you know, that's a story that really highlights what we're dealing with here. You know, and I had another thought because look, South American jails, right? South America, it's the main producer of cocaine in the world. It has been for many, many years, all around there, Bolivia, Peru, Colombia, you know, Venezuela, Ecuador, you know, and when they get that certain kind of crack over there that they're smoking, it really fries the brains. You know, so you know, you are really talking about lunatics, right? You know, I mean, it's frying people's minds who are already gone with trauma, desensitized, and all the rest of it, trapped, caught within that violence. I can't think of anything more dangerous, Peter. I've got to be honest with you.
Yeah, it is frightening. It is right, it's terrifying. And knowing that also, I mean, like I said earlier, if you get into a problem or a fight, you know, you've got to hold your own, or I mean, there's no help coming for him. So, you know.
Do or die. So look, you know, from your experience in there, obviously, what was the drugs trade like in there, fueling the violence? Bearing in mind we're in South America, so I presume it's cocaine driven, crack driven, right?
I mean, the main drugs in there were cocaine and cannabis. Like I say, again, in the first prison in Quito, because the gang structure wasn't so strong there, we actually ended up bringing in our own coke and selling it to the foreigners with the help of the Colombians. You know, just something to do, basically. But the second prison, that was a completely different story because the gangs having it all screwed down so tightly. So they had it completely organized. They would have they had a boss on each wing. They had a boss of the drugs, who had a worker on each wing. So they had a boss of the drugs on each wing. They had a boss of the alcohol on each wing, somebody selling the cells and collecting the money. They would collect sort of tax every week on a Sunday. They would tax anything coming into the prison, so food, Coca-Cola, going into the shops, this is, they would tax all of that. So they would put like 10 cents on each bottle of Coca-Cola. They were making tens of thousands of dollars a week from the drugs trade, selling firearms, prostitution, selling alcohol. I mean, huge, huge business in there, which is why there was so much violence between the gangs.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the second prison that I went into, there was 8,000 prisoners in there, split equally between the two gangs. So it was like 4,000 in each side, 26 wings in total. I mean, just a huge place, you know, a small town within walls, basically. So a massive economy.
Peter, I know that on that journey, like old guys I used to know from the old life, they started, they built their organisation. They would have went to source, they would have been in that circle of people who was doing that, in that niche, and they would have got very, very big. I mean, I know at one time you was doing 10 kilos. Now I know, behind that, so much more would have been going through your hands, and your organisation's hands. You'd have been trying to find so many ways, to supply, your transportation and all that, and keep it going, right? And to clean the money, right? It's fair to say on the other side. So, how did you get nicked just before that? Was it in South America? And, and then obviously, where did that start, the beginning of that case that see you get all that prison time?
Yeah, so the beginning of the problems, shall we say, began in Crystal Palace in London when the police raided a laboratory there that was processing the cocaine out of the rubber that we'd impregnated it into. So at that time, I was actually in Cali in Colombia, in the south of Colombia, on business. And my associates in London, all their phones went dead suddenly. And of course, when that happens, the alarm started ringing. So we quickly established that they'd been nicked in London in a lab with about 5 keys of coke and a hydraulic press for repressing the coke and precursor chemicals for extracting the cocaine and reformulating it. So when they were in prison, one of them, the Colombian, got flipped or got turned by the British police, SOCA as it was at that time, or SOCO, I can't remember what it. Anyway, they turned him into an informant, and he came out of prison after 6 months on remand and started feeding information about us to them, to the police. So obviously they started building up a case. We quickly, actually I got tipped off through a contact who had somebody on the payroll, of the police. We got tipped off basically that I was under surveillance and there was a big operation on us. So we started getting some of the surveillance notes, through this intermediary. But after a while, he started playing us for the money, and the information started becoming a bit wonky and wasn't quite accurate. So I had to drop him because he was just playing for money basically. But obviously by that time we'd established that we had trouble and someone was giving information about us, not just one person, several people. So I mean, a lot of people at this point will say, well, why didn't you stop? And the reason I didn't stop was because I knew I was already fucked, basically. I knew I was already past the point of no return. Whatever happened, I was in trouble now. So I carried on. They took out, I think they took out another lab, but basically it all came to a crunch when they took out a lab in Edinburgh, in Scotland, and I had a very close call there because I'd actually been in the lab the night before it happened, overseeing what was going on, and the Colombians that were doing the work had spotted some surveillance And I'd just gone, right, okay, I'm getting out of here. So I disappeared to a hotel. Next morning, again, all the phones were off. So I was like, oh, fucking hell. Went down to the flat where we had the lab. Sure enough, get to the door, front door, the doors all were smashed in, well, boarded up by now. So at that point, I decided to pretty quick, well, I waited around a little bit, but after a while, I disappeared, got smuggled out of the country by some Turkish friends into France, went on the run, disappeared as best I could. Decided to do that one last job, ended up in Ecuador, of course, got nicked. Because the Colombian, who was key informant, knew that I was going out there, he set it up, set me up to be nicked. So I went out to Ecuador, did the one last job, didn't make it back, got arrested in Quito with a tent with allegedly about just under 8 kilos of coke in it. So obviously that was the start of the lockdown and the
It's my experience, you know, and the drugs trade, like anything really in organized crime, but especially the drugs trade, in my experience, is the observation. It pulls everyone in such a way, and you constantly walk into other people's observation, and sometimes this is how they get a right result, you know. And but look, you know, and it can go really, really wrong for people. I mean, there are countless cases from people from the old days, guys who I knew, where some of them, you know, they weren't even involved in the conspiracy. You know, they'd be seen on a meet, and then the next thing they're down as transportation manager, you know, and they go and get a 10 for that, for a phone call, for one phone call.
I've known
I mean, it is, let me just put that out there, what a spider's web it is when you get into that, and how really, in so many ways, I always say, but especially for your line of work, Peter, you know, in the old days with the guys I used to know that level to do that, you know, we have to be lucky. We had to be lucky all the time, but they only needed to be lucky once.
Once, exactly.
Yeah, and for your line of work, it was unbelievably, it was stacked against you, really. There was big money in it, but to get there, the odds was really against you, right? To reach it,
as well. Sorry?
The odds was really stacked against you to even reach the level that you was at. Do you know what I'm saying? To come that way to, it's an unbelievable journey. So you got nicked with the 8 kilos of cocaine. So that was basically the beginning and the end. What happened then?
So, I mean, when I got nicked, I was nicked by the Ecuadorian Interpol, obviously at the behest of the English police and soccer, who were there in the background. So I ended up spending a month, maybe actually it was longer than that, it was about 5 weeks in the police holding cells of Interpol, right next to the airport in Quito. Could hear the planes taking off and landing. And the holding cells there were horrible. I mean, they didn't provide any food. There was one cold tap for water. There were no showers. I mean, it was just a nightmare. So luckily, I had some money, and I was able to get money sent through the embassy. So me and my girlfriend, who I got nicked with out there, could eat, and you know, were okay. But yeah, I remember shortly after getting nicked, somebody managed to smuggle a phone into the police cell. So I actually managed to get a phone call out to some associates in England. I mean, this was literally I think within 24 hours of me getting nicked, I managed to get a phone call out and warned them. So that actually saved a lot of people back in Britain from getting nicked, which is lucky for them. Not so lucky for me, but anyway, yeah. So spent 5 weeks in Interpol, and then got taken to the remand center in Quito. Managed to bribe our way out of there after about 2 weeks into the main prison, because the remand center was just horrible. So I'd actually made friends with a bunch of Syrians, some Arabs, who were there on terrorism charges, drug trafficking, but linked to terrorism. They were sending coke back to Lebanon, I think, and possibly Israel, getting the money, and then with the money buying firearms and explosives, Hezbollah, all that bunch.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So they were nice guys. A few of them spoke English quite well, so became friendly with them. They watched my back, so sort of went through the system, through into the main prison in Quito, and again onto that wing for the foreigners with them. So I was, I had quite a smooth introduction to the prison system there. Really, I mean, in many ways, I was lucky all the way through. Though, lucky to survive it.
No, look, absolutely, absolutely. To come through adversity, like, live the life you have to absolutely to survive it. It's not the cat has 9 lives, maybe it has 20. I get it, I really do. So look, let's jump back a little bit, just to give people an idea. 5 minutes of where you was born and what your early life was like before you start going into the criminality. Then we'll go into that a little bit and what got you into it. So how was you born? How was the start of your life, Peter?
Yeah, so I was born in Stroud, Gloucestershire, and lived in a small village on the edge of Cotswolds. Come from quite a poor background. My father was a builder. My mum, I suppose, did a bit of artwork. Went to school, secondary school in Tetbury, Gloucestershire, to Sir William Romney's. So big shout out to anyone there. Did quite well at school. I was quite academic, liked school. Home life wasn't great. My mum was an alcoholic, so that was pretty hard. Like I say, my dad was a builder, so there wasn't a great deal of money, which I think was one of the factors in me becoming involved in the drugs trade. Very early age. I mean, started using weed at the age of 12 because it was sort of around me anyway. And started getting into the illegal rave scene again at an early age because I had 2 older brothers, one of who was quite a successful DJ and was involved in the party scene. So he was probably about maybe 6 years older than me. So it would have been 16, 17, involved in all those parties. So I started tagging along with them. Saw it was quite easy to make money at those parties because it was anything goes in those days, wasn't it? I mean, you could sell pills, weed, whatever you wanted. One around shouting it out quite openly, and it was easy money. So picked up those skills. I mean, I was actually first arrested. I suppose I was probably arrested at a very young age of 6. Stole a friend's mother's gold jewellery. God knows why. Took it home. So I was obviously quite compass mentis, knew what it was, knew it had value. Took it home, hid it. For, I don't know, whatever reason. And I remember the local police officer, PC Flinders, he was a motorcycle cop, got called out, and I remember being sat down on my dad's knee in the kitchen of our house in the village, and this policeman, PC Flinders, turning up, moustache, glasses, and saying, Peter, if you carry on the way you are, you'll end up in big trouble. You'll go to prison. I'm in tears, and I won't do it again. I swear. Scared the hell out of me. And I suppose for many years I did toe the line. Like I said, I was quite good at school.
So it was, I'm struck by it's not really the there was no signs, besides you was a rebel, certainly, and, a bit different and you push it, but certainly not that you would have the upbringing that would shape the international cocaine trafficker you would become, right? Not to say that there's any size that fits all with this, really, but, so, you kind of, you went on there, and I get it with the pies in them days, right? I was around in them days, and I went on. So that exposed you to the drug scene right earlier on, and, the kind of money that was involved in it and how it worked and all that. So what was your first, because cocaine, drugs, organised crime like that, first and foremost, especially at the level you was at, is a business, Peter.
Yeah.
It's a business. It's money driven. It's just especially cocaine. From what
Yeah,
I've seen in my experiences, that brings a lot of violence with it. It's the worst one out there because of the money involved, and and the people involved,
yeah.
and that kind of thing. So, what was your first introduction into that business, that market, or what you was to become later on?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, the cocaine, like you say, I mean, I didn't really become involved with that until I was a bit older, around, well, until I went to university in
Yeah,
Cardiff. Um, so I actually got nicked when I was, I think, 17 with a couple of ounces of hashish cut up into eighths and, well, eighths, I think it was. And got, I think it was a bit of probation or something. And that sort of frightened me. And I saw the effect it had on my family, so that stopped me in my tracks. Really, I managed to get my A levels, got four A levels, got a few offers at university, so I ended up going to Cardiff to read archaeology, study archaeology. And it was only there that, being a student, not having much money again, I started seeing there was quite a high demand for the drugs, and being that I was quite near to where my home area was, Gloucestershire, it was only like 45 minutes on the train to get back home to my contacts for all the drugs that I could possibly want. So people started asking me, oh, can you get hold of pills and can you get hold of coke and this, that, and the other? And I said, well, yeah, I can. I don't really want to, but I can. Got strapped for cash. Started going to a few parties, club nights, in Cardiff and all the rest of it. And, came that moment, I thought, sod it, I'll start making a bit of money on the side so I can eat a bit better rather than baked beans on toast every day. So get on the train, go home, come back with a few pills, and then this guy from Portsmouth, remember his name, Toby, I'll mention him because he won't mind, from Bromsey, hi Toby, if you're out there, asked me to get him some coke. So phoned up a mate of mine and said, look, can you get hold of any coke? And he said, yeah, no problem. So I bought half, I think it was a quarter ounce or half an ounce. Got that back to Cardiff, and it wasn't particularly good. It was cut to bits. So, it didn't take long for me to start selling coke, and it became very popular. I remember after only a couple of months, I met some of the local dealers in Cardiff who were, dealing ounces, half ounces, quarters of kilos. And before I know it, they're asking me to get them coke as well. And my mate in my hometown in Stroud said, look, don't want to be involved. I'll put you in contact with the guy who's the intermediary to the people in London. So met him, the guy up near Oxford. So started going with him up to London, started meeting some of his people up in London, up in North London, Islington area, won't mention any names, I'm sure you can imagine who. Some of the main people up in London. Then before I know it, I'm bringing kilos back down to Cardiff, selling to people then in my home area, Cardiff, then start branching out, meeting people in Bristol. And before I know it, it's really taken over my life down in Cardiff, and I'm getting pretty stressed by it all. My studies start dropping by the wayside. And I mean, I was quite archaeology has always been a big favourite of mine anyway, so I found the course pretty easy. So I was able to sort of get up through the studies without too much trouble, as well as doing a lot of dealing. But in the second year, obviously, it sort of ramps up a bit, the studies.
Second year of uni is where it's at. Yeah, this is where
And
you're
I ended up
falling
dropping
asleep,
out.
right, at night doing the research, right?
I ended up dropping out, unfortunately, that was the pivotal moment, really, where I should have stayed on and done my studies and not dropped out. So dropped out, moved to Bristol because my girlfriend was living in Bristol at the time, and end up making more contacts in Bristol. And then I decided, well, I haven't got any contacts in Scotland, so I asked a friend of mine, oh, have you got any contacts in Scotland? Because I know it goes for good money up there. So he makes some contacts for me in Scotland, and before I know it, I'm selling to people all over Britain, doing like you mentioned earlier, 10 keys a week, going up to London, bringing back loads of hash as well. I've met some of the main people in Wales, loads of people in Bristol, and you know, just contacts, really high level contacts all over the place.
So at your height, you know, how much was you making? You know, a week, a month, Peter?
I mean, to illustrate it, some days, just, I mean, in a day, sometimes I'd make 20 grand, but I suppose average would be monthly 30 grand, roughly.
That's a
But
lot of
spending
money when you're getting it every month, and then there's bigger, you know, there's bigger things, there's
yeah,
bigger, there's bigger deals, right?
yeah.
So,
But also coming with the bigger deals comes the bigger problems, and you make and you lose at the same time sometimes. I mean, I ended up, because like you say, there is quite a lot of violence involved in it. I got robbed I remember coming out to London. This is quite a good story. Coming up to London one night to meet some guy in Chiswick, and he phoned me up and said, "Oh yeah, we got really good coke and this, that, and the other." So come off the M4, drop off onto the Chiswick High Road, and pull into a road just behind the Chiswick High Road, one of the lanes there. And I'd got a flat tyre, unfortunately, just coming off the motorway. And you know, when you're on a mission, shall we say, or doing a deal, and there's just all those warning signs keep popping up. And on this particular evening, I was on the way down the M4 and I was late, and things were just not going right, and there was always signs telling me you shouldn't carry on, but I kept ignoring them. Got to Chiswick, had this puncture. This guy turns up, and I said, make sure you come on your own, because I was a bit wary of him anyway, because it was sort of a new relationship. And I said, make sure you come on your own. I don't want to see anyone with you, and all the rest of it. And I was only buying half a key, I think. I had the cash with me, and he turns up, parks just behind me, and I've spotted there's another guy in the car with him. I said, oh, fucking hell, what's going on? Before you know it, I've got a Derringer, two-shot Derringer stuck in my face. The main guy I'm talking to, who's got in the car next to me with a half key of coke, he showed me the coke. And I said, fucking hell, that's the same coke I'm getting from someone else around the other side of London in Erith. You probably know Erith. And what's the chances of that? And as I'm saying that, the driver's side doors come open, and there's a two-shot Derringer stuck in my face. And I can see the guy with the gun is high, because he's shaking and he's nervous, and that's the worst situation, because it only takes a little bit of pressure on that trigger and you're fucked.
Yeah.
So I said to him, I said, look, take the fucking money, because I knew, after having seen the coke, I knew where it was coming from. I knew who the source was for it. So I thought, fuck, I'm not going to get shot for 14 grand at the time, because I can get this money back probably. So they'd taken the money, they disappeared off into the night. The fucking police have turned up, because someone's seen it going on. Someone's walked past and seen all the drama. So the police have turned up, and I've said, oh yeah, it was someone just robbed me for my wallet. Obviously I'm not going to get them involved, am I? Because I'm doing a drug deal. So they've gone, right, and then left me. Anyway, cutting the story short, I've contacted my man in Erith, and I've said, look, I've just been robbed. I think that it's the same, the coke was the same as what I'm getting from you. Can you speak to your people and ask them if they know blah-de-blah and blah-de-blah, because they've just fucking robbed me. Sure enough, they come back to me and say, yeah, we know them. I said, well, I'm not paying you until you sort it out with them, because they've just robbed me, so you're going to have to get your money off them. So they went and collected the money from them.
Well, let me just,
Anyway,
that's a really good story as well, Peter, right? Because this is the other side of that life. That is a constant, right? Is a constant. Is, you're meeting people, with plastic bags in car parks and all this shit.
Yeah.
Wherever, whatever, a lot of money. and there's always that chance. It's a very treacherous game. It really is. You're aware of that all the time. There's that, or worse, or there's prison, or So this is what This is what you're navigating all the time. Look, what do you say to people? What do you think of that life now that you've gone through it? Obviously, it's your experience. With all that experience, what would you say to people now about that life that you've lived?
I'll give you an example. Somebody just yesterday, contacted me. A guy from Paris who read my book, is a chef, contacted me saying, I've seen your documentaries. I want to be like you. I want to get into cocaine trafficking. And I contacted him by messenger, and I said, look, please do not get into cocaine trafficking. Because the guy had said to me, I want to support my family, my mum's ill. And it's half the reasons that I got, the same reasons that I got into it myself. And I said to him, look, when I was in Ecuador, after having trafficked loads of cocaine, made quite a lot of money, ended up in trouble. My mother died whilst I was in prison. I never got to see her. Didn't see her before she died. My auntie died whilst I was there. My cousin died whilst I was there. Loads of my friends died whilst I was in prison there. Never got to see them. I didn't help my family at all by drug trafficking. All I did was actually cause them more hurt and pain. And I'm lucky to be alive. The chances of me being alive right now are millions to one. Could have been killed any day, any minute in prison over there. And I would just say to anyone thinking about doing what I did, don't do it, because it's not worth it. There's much easier ways of making money legally. I'm sure you're quite intelligent. Whoever you are watching this, you'll be able to start your own business. If you really want to do something and you've got a dream of starting your own business, do that. Do something legal, because you'll get to spend the money. You won't have to be looking over your shoulder, worrying about the police or worrying if somebody's going to kill you. You're not going to end up in prison, and you're not going to end up, hopefully, dead, unless it's by natural causes. Just don't do it. It's not worth it. It might seem it's worth it. It's not easy money. Everyone says it's easy money. It isn't easy money. It's fucking hard work.
This money, it's not easy. When you're talking about this kind of stuff, even if you do build up a kind of a fortune or whatever you want to call it,
the police are going to take it off.
They strip you bare and they take it all off you.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing I would say about that piece, is look, and I've said this before, so many guys, like you and guys from the old days, was, really talented. They could have been anything that they wanted to be. It just so happened, for, a variety of reasons, this was the path we all chose, me included, right? So look, but, you put your mind to it, there's much wiser, much more things talented people can apply themselves to, right? While creative and certainly not destructive, right? To us or our family, right?
Yeah.
So look, what is your mission now, Peter? What does the future hold, and what are you doing now? You've got your books out. I know that. You've done documentaries and there's other stuff.
Yeah.
What's next?
Yeah, I'm currently writing the prequel to my first book, which was Ellen Fiona. Just put a little plug in there for it. So writing that. I'm hoping from those books that there'll be something like a Netflix series made, or a film like yourself, the same sort of thing, sort of similar thing that you're doing. I think it's a great story. It's got loads of legs to be possibly laid into a series. When I did the Banged Up Abroad episode, they called it Breaking Bad in Britain, which I thought was quite comical. It does have some similarities to that, and could be quite a good series. But so that's one thing that I'm working towards. But really, truly, I've got several business ideas that I really want to get off the ground. People laugh when I say importation and exportation. They say,
there are many things to export. We're talking about coffee, right? Chocolate.
Yeah.
This is good business, right? Good product,
coffee,
good business.
cacao.
Same rules apply, apart from, of course, all the bad stuff.
Yeah, say all the same rules as not the same rules, but the same principles of business.
Yeah, the same, apart from the bad stuff. This is what I'm saying.
Obviously not bringing in cocaine. It's all the same.
Yeah.
It's coffee, cacao, and something else, but just not cocaine. So hoping to start these businesses. running up against quite a lot of obstacles, obviously. I've started the company, but I mean, I'm sure you've come up against all the barriers yourself, and trying to borrow money and get it financed is a nightmare with a criminal record. As long as you're it's not easy. So
Yeah, look, it's not easy, right? But what I would like to say, of course, it's not easy. Anything that's any good is not easy, especially
yeah,
if it,
I will make it happen.
exceptional. But look, you've lived a exceptional life, and you know how to solve problems.
Yeah,
You know how to survive, and you know how to get things done. I mean,
yeah,
that's
I will get it
solve
done.
problems. That's very evident. Look, and I know we're talking as well, Pete, and you have an unbelievable story. It's very, very inspirational. What you went through on your journey, it is, it's an unbelievable story. I know there's a lot of stuff in there for viewers who would want an in-depth understanding of what a journey like that would actually like to be, the highs, the lows of it, and that they get value out of it, the right value that can help them improve their own lives. Peter Tritton, I'd like to thank you for coming on The Big Shift and telling us your story. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Stephen. It's been a great experience and very humbling, and I appreciate you asking me on the show. I know you've had some fantastic guests, and I was surprised when you asked me on. So thanks a lot.
Thanks for tuning in, guys, to a wonderful new segment of The Big Shift with Stephen Gillen. Make sure to subscribe, go into stephengillen.com and sign up for more wonderful content to expedite, help, and support you on your own personal journey of success.